Active le micro, merci Sébastien. Donc oui, aujourd'hui on va aborder la notion des outils et comme on a des intervenants qui sont anglophones, je vais tout de suite switcher towards English and start this first part with a general overview of why tools are maybe needed and what is the level of use of contract management tools in the industry now, in every project management teams, how you can eventually use that kind of tools and why, when you have projects that use complex contract management, but also with projects that have some kind of contract management use. We'll see that together. And first, I'll present the company arises. Don't be afraid, won't be long, just to say why we're talking about contract management tools today. We've been working for more than 15 years, 16 years now, in consulting on projects. And especially in projects, we've been working on project management, contract management, skills, training in contract management, procurement, commissioning, etc., etc., in all the processes that support project management. And during all these years, we have learned to use tools and not to use them when they are not appropriate. So that's why I wanted to make this small introduction about how and when to use contract management tools and when are they needed and when should you use them. So we've been also following during all these years the evolution of these tools that range from nothing to very integrated tools using the cloud, and soon we will be using our brain to make it work like in the science fiction movies. But nowadays we have tools that have evolved in the last 15 years, and that's interesting to see them and to see what they can do and if they are appropriate for your own use. And tools can be used in projects, but they are also knowledge management friendly. When you use that kind of tools, usually you can also use them for front-end and back-end experience. We'll see that again. Okay. Before I start, small announcement on behalf of the University de Bordeaux. We will be opening the applications for the next session of the diploma. There will be two. The first one will be between May 17th and June 25. So you can apply during that period. We will have individual interviews with all the attendees between the end of June and the beginning of July. And after the 7th of July, we will tell who's been selected for the diploma. So here are the information, and most of all, if you need some additional information, you've got this mail here, contractmanagement@bordeaux.fr. Feel free to write a mail and ask for any information you need about what the DU is about, how you can apply, what are the files needed, etc., etc., etc. So now to start with the core of the subject. Why are tools needed? Tell me. Why do we need tools for contract management? Well, contract is like a collection of data. And we've got a very complex data, and it's managing it. It's rarely automatized now. It's like still doing it by hand. There are many kinds of data. The first thing we think about when we think about a contract is, of course, its text part. It's written law, and so text is the first data that we have to manage with the contracts, be it in the contract itself, but be it also with all the specifications, all the writings that accompany the contract, maybe references to legal texts, to laws, to decrees, to norms, etc., etc. So text is the first data that we have to manage when we do contract management. And there is legal data, technical data, all kind of text. But text is mostly static, except maybe for writings, with mails, letters, all the exchanges we'll have in contracts, and we see that next. Text is mainly static, so it's a big collection of data, but mostly when this contract is signed, it won't move much, or by the side. But we've got also all kind of data that are figures. We of course have costs, but we also have to measure quantities, time periods, etc., etc. The quantities can be in various units. It might be technical quantities. It might be legal quantities. So we need to have access to all these figures and keep account on all these figures. But third is where it becomes really complex, because the figures, well, mainly we fix them at the beginning of the contract, and we can put an Excel sheet and say, okay, we only follow figures. That will be easy. But as soon as the contract is signed, and even before that, when the contract is negotiated, there's a collection of information that we'll have to manage to on documents produced during the contract. What we call in my company the contract memory. Every correspondence, minutes of meeting, schedule revisions, change orders, everything that is produced during the life or during the contract lifecycle management period. And it's not only when the contract is signed, it starts before the contract is signed, during the negotiation, and after the completion of the contract, there are guarantee periods, there are things when you still have this kind of document that is produced. So it's a very, very long period. It can be very long periods during which we have to manage this data and have access to the data to be able to find it easily, not lose some time at doing some speleology or archaeology. There are some contracts I've been working on contracts that have lasted for 15 years. Imagine the data that has been produced when you say, okay, 6 months after the beginning of the contract, there was a big event. What is the contract memory that we have? It was 14 years ago. How do we do that? So this is the big part, or the hard part of contract management data. And also, last but not least, we've got in contract management to manage processes. The processes are for example, some workflows like validation processes. What happens when I write a letter to my partner in the contract? What happens when I receive a study, a plan to validate it? What is the change order validation process? Some of these processes are described in the contract, and we've got to comply to these processes. And some of these processes have obligations, like you've got 7 days to answer, or you've got 15 days, or you've got to ask for this person, and this person only is able to go forward for the next step. It can be in the contract or not. And if not, you've got to build them and to share them with our counterparts in the contract. And when they are built, they somehow become part of the contract. So we've got all this data, and that can be quite a lot. Here we've got maybe 500, 600 pages. At the end of a normal medium contract, here it can be 1,000, 2,000 pages of documents that have been produced during the contract life. So that's quite a lot. And what do we encounter in the various missions that we had working with companies? What is the level of maturity of the organizations? Are they ready to use contract management tools. And what do they use nowadays? Okay, so there are different levels. The first one is, well, nothing. And it's the most common. I say that maybe 80–70% of the companies that do project management now have nothing as far as contract management tools are concerned. So you're in a situation where legal, procurement, project management, engineering, each have a different system. These systems have no connections between them. And usually they're not built for contract management, but they are built for their own production. Legal has its system for writing contracts. Procurement has its system for editing bids, for editing comments, for editing, for treating invoices. Project management has planning and cost management system. Engineering has its system for generating specifications, plans, etc., document workflows. But they're not connected, and they do not take into account what is needed by the contract. The second level is what I call the Excel something. You've got some Excel somewhere located with someone who's been endeavored with a contract manager tag. Yeah, you're responsible for contract management. You'll be doing this Excel. And they have this Excel something where they collect information about exchanges, about change orders. Sometimes it's 5 or 6 Excel sheets. Sometimes they're connected. Visual Basic is my friend. And sometimes not. And there's still no sharing of information, but at least we collect the data and we try to organize it. It's the first level of maturity. Sometimes we also have a contract library where especially it's a legal thing to keep a digital version of all the clauses in the contract. And maybe sometimes there are some little workflows if you want to modify your clauses. But that's the first level when people say, okay, at least we need some tool because contract management is important. So we try to put something into place. On some contracts, it may be just what you need. On big contracts, soon you will encounter difficulties because of the collection of data, the amount of the data. The next step is when we have some sharing. Some sharing, like we have the Excel, we've got this, but we've got SharePoint. So we can share files and everybody, if they respect the good process, can address the file, can use it, complete it, modify it, etc., etc. You can also have some sharing with document management systems that are connected and that are thought about, like contract management tools. When you've got a large quantity of studies that has to be delivered by one party in the contract, document management systems are some part of the answer. Still, these tools provide some sharing, but no process management. It's mostly static management. They're not addressing the process that you need to comply. And the next level is integrated systems. Integrated systems are tools specifically designed for contract management. And we'll see with AVEVA afterwards an example of one kind of tool like this. But you've got to go, it's difficult to go from nothing directly to integrated systems because, well, the people usually, if they've got nothing, they don't think they have the need for something complicated and costly. So they won't see the need for integrated system. And sometimes you've got to go through all the steps before you go to integrated systems. And maybe on some projects, this step will be enough and you stop there. Or maybe this step will be enough and will satisfy all your needs. And that's okay. On big projects, more and more, these kind of systems can be useful. So what kind of tools can be of use? First one is the one I told about already, is contract libraries. These are the digital version of the contracts. They allow rapid recovery of clauses. rapid reference, rapid analysis. Still, it is what I call static use. It's mostly useful for legal people who will try to modify one point, one virgule, one comma, one sign, one thing after the other, one word, and still see all the impacts on all the documents that they are using to see if they modify there, do they have a modification elsewhere that I have to do? Okay. It's very useful, but it's mostly static. You've got, of course, sharing tools, I mentioned it. So you can build with sharing tools that are very accessible, things that are interesting. And you've got process management tools to manage complex processes. And now, what I recommend is to have this process management when you have processes with high stakes in the contract, where delays have to be respected, where high costs are involved. For instance, if you've got a severe clauses for validation processes, for change order processes, put into place a process management system. And if this system can be addressed by the proper tool, it will be very useful and you will save money. Well, so are these tools and can do all of that? What we see is usually tools that are making this part, contract libraries, tools that are making this, tools that are making this, and tools that are making sharing and process management more useful. Collecting, sharing, and process management. They can now discuss with all kind of systems like SAP or whatever you have as accountability or whatever you have in contract libraries, we can put place. So we can build things now. Okay, so the problem is not technique anymore. The problem is the maturity of people to use them, the change management that is needed to use this kind of tools. It's an investment, but there's a return on investment that is certain, that I'm convinced of. Is it necessary to have them? I will say as a consulting firm that it depends on the organization, on the level of maturity. Do not try to go too quick to integrated systems if you're not sure you can use them. That's with every information system tools. We had a small chat with Vincent Leclerc. I was saying, is CLM, contract lifecycle management tools, a good idea to simplify processes? I say, okay, if the CLM makes the processes more rapid, more effective, if you gain fluidity with the process, okay. If the CLM allows to simplify the processes, because the CLM will make you ask the good questions. Oh, I understand I could do this like that. Then, okay, that's a good thing to put CLM in your organization. But if the CLM you use makes you bend your organization to fit in the needs of the CLM and build something totally new, I say, beware. Let's see what you can do on your organization, and the tool will come afterwards. It's not the CLM that will impose the tool, but the tool that will serve the CLM. It will serve the... Well, okay, it is what I wanted to say before I give the microphone to AVEVA with Mounir and Melanie. Are you still there?
Yes, merci Thiebaut. Merci for the introduction, and bonjour everyone. Thank you very much for making the time to join us today on this session. And it is very, very interesting for us what Thiebaut was talking about, because this is exactly how we as an organization view contract management. This is how we've developed our solution and how our solution has evolved for the last 21 years. Our first solution came out in 2000. So the plan for our part of this session today is to expand more on what Thiebaut presented. I'll provide the settings, if you like. Melanie, my colleague, who's one of our senior consultants and used to work heavily with the EPC contractors and has lots of experience herself of working on big projects, managing contracts, dealing with subcontractors, dealing with clients, or dealing with the main contractors, and having personally experienced the challenges, will give us an introduction and a demo of the system. The intention is we're not going to take you through features and functionality, so we'll use a process example and a themed demo of the system. Please do collect and provide questions in the chat. And at the end of the session, we'll endeavor to answer as many of those questions as we can. So similarly to what Thiebaut did, just a very brief introduction to AVEVA, just for those who don't know who AVEVA is. AVEVA is a UK company. We're well over 50 years old. We started as a small research company at the University of Cambridge, funded by the UK government back then, and evolved and grown and become a stock listed company in the UK. And in fact, we are 60% owned by Schneider Electric, right? We're a UK company, but majority parent company is Schneider Electric. And we recently acquired OSI Soft, which is one of the leading tools for data management, especially for large organizations in the power industry, in the energy industry. And we continue to grow. And one of the key things the pandemic has really forced on a lot of our customers, and it's something we've been working on for the last 5-6 years, is the move towards cloud. So our solution, cloud has become a necessity today for our customers. Cloud has become a necessity for capital projects to be able to manage the contracts and have the accessibility. So the solution you will see today is a cloud. Not only is it a cloud-enabled solution, it's been a cloud solution since the year 2000. So we've always known that eventually this is how it's going to be, because you need all the different stakeholders to participate and to be able to connect and manage, as Thiebaut was saying earlier, the process. And this is something you will hear me say as well during our session. It's the process, right? For us, contract management is about managing the process. It's not just about managing the static document, and it's not just about the contract authoring part. We can do all that, but the real value you get from the contract management system and the solution we provide, especially on large capital projects, but it also works for the smaller projects, is helping you predict potential issues. And we help you predict potential issues by focusing on the processes. So basically, in the contract that you agree at the beginning of the project, you will have the administrative procedures section. What we ultimately do is we take that administrative procedure section, we systemize the process, we build the workflows for you, and we enable it through the system. So you become proactive rather than reactive. And as we all know, and you're more experienced than we are, for example, from one of the studies by IACCM, 9% of the company's bottom line, its profits, are directly linked to the contract management, especially when it's on large capital and, as Thiebaut said, complex projects. And the complexity is not just with a complex project, but a long-term project or a long-term contract. Somebody who starts working on the contract on day one, and let's say the contract's running in year 10, 12, 13, that person will have gone. Where is the information? Where is the information in context or the memory, as Thiebaut was saying earlier? This is what the platform and the solution will help us. And one example I like to use is how contract management is viewed in capital projects. And I will not claim credit for some of the slides that come next, because that was actually prepared by one of our customers and to try to demonstrate internally the need for a contract management solution when they're managing capital projects. Because, the common thoughts are always, well, we already have so many systems. again, as Thiebaut said, you've got systems for sharing information, you've got systems for static data. So you've got your document management systems, you've got your ERP systems, you've got your emails, you've got your cost management, and the best tool ever developed, Excel spreadsheets, right? I used to use Excel spreadsheets so much that in the old days, I used to write my letters in Excel. I did not use the word processor on my system. That's how much we've become reliant on Excel spreadsheets. But if we look into capital projects and we think of contract management in the major capital projects, it's like living in the blizzard. You know, you're driving through that snowstorm, right? And you can't see what's ahead of you. And for us, the contract is not just about the process, but it's also about managing the relationship, managing the commercial relationship between the parties to the contract. So as we're going through, how are we going to know if we just receive an email and a communication, if this communication is contractually important, if it doesn't provide any context, if it doesn't trigger any alerts and reminders, as Thiebaut again was saying earlier, what if it requires a response within a certain period? Otherwise, there will be a contractual implication, right? So it becomes an actual obligation to respond. What about this other communication? Is that contractually important, or is it just a communication? Or is there a link between those two communications? So just imagine if I receive an email from a supplier, Thiebaut receives an email related to what I received from the same supplier, but there's no linkage between the two. How are we to know what implication each one of those communications is going to have? Because they might have some cost implication, because they may eventually lead to a contract change. And it's the management of that contract change which will be critical. It's how we can try to avoid the impact of certain implications, and it's all about being prepared. As I showed in one of my first slides, it's about having the potential of viewing what's going to happen, right? Rather than always having to react to what's been happening. And this is where, you know, we introduce Colin. Now, Colin is an actual contract manager who I used to work with as one of our customers. And he was a very experienced contract manager and had to go through a lot of issues and challenges when he's managing his contracts and having, you know, to have access to the right information, access to the right justifications. So for example, when he receives an email from finance says, we have this invoice, and what is this invoice related to, right? And he has no idea what it's about, right? He checks his emails, he's got no history, no information. He speaks with the contractor or with the supplier, trying to build the context, the contract memory, as Thiebaut described it earlier, to try to understand what there is. They might find a handwritten site instruction, right? But that site instruction did not follow the process, did not follow the workflow, did not follow the endorsements, the approvals to enable that work to be done. Then having to check with the project controls, do we have budget to pay for this extra work? And then the real pain happens. He needs to go and ask the finance director for money. And that should never happen on a project, right? The contract manager should know what's going on, should have that visibility, and should have that transparency. So what we're going to do now is Melanie will take us through how Procon will, AVEVA Contract Risk Management will help Colin and take us through that change management, the linking of the information, the availability of the reporting, the analysis that's required to enable successful contract management on capital projects.
All right, thank you, Mounir. Let me share my screen. And thank you for everyone joining today. I'm very happy to be with you. Mounir, can you confirm you can see the screen now?
Yes, we can.
So the problem that Colin has is an invoice went straight to the ERP system. That would be their financial system of record. And again, finance has no idea what this invoice is for, so they're going to go back to the project. Most correctly, Colin would be our contract manager. He's responsible for answering for it. Where a solution can come in to help is, again, getting before that invoice hits that, and then we've got questions and no approvals in place. If we can use a solution to then have our communications going between company to supplier, then we can work in some type of solution as we're seeing here. What we're looking at is a communication template, and our solution communication templates are very intelligent. This goes well beyond your normal email. This would show me that this is an application for payment. It's come in, it's given me a notification. I can see that I've got 9 days to agree to this, and this would be based off of the terms and conditions of the contract. The status is awaiting agreement from my company. And we already have an outstanding review, which is amazing because my workflow can kick in as soon as this comes in from my supplier, and it's already going to go to the proper people to let them start reviewing it. So I don't have to open this and then pass it off. I also don't have to take it out of the system and start chasing an email looking for reviews and approvals. So as a contract manager at a glance, what I can see inside of a communication template, I start to see the communication details. Like an email, I would have a subject line or a title. This tells me what it's about. Then I would have the issue date, who it's from, who it's to. I could have a description to give me more details. And then right in the front of this data, I don't have to go digging into the attachment. I can see the financial impact. So again, that's great. I can use this financial impact to, again, immediately recognize it. And we can also use this in analytics that I'll show you. The supplier was able to add their attachment. This should be their application for payment, what they're claiming that they have completed. And then over to the right, I can actually start seeing a process chain. So this application for payment is actually requesting payment based off of a change order. Now I can see that it's agreed to, but I want to see further information. Again, this change order did not happen just yesterday. So I would rather to go into my stories, and this would be my communication history. If I go to my stories, now I have a history trail. Even if this was Colin's first day on the job, this is immensely going to help him because he's going to be able to see where did this application for payment come from. If it's claiming off of this change order, then I want even further details. What was the origin? Where did this change order begin? Who initiated? Before this change order, we have another communication that's been linked. This is a proposal. And they did that based off a request from a site instruction. Like in Colin's situation, they had that site instruction, but it was just a printed paper in a folder buried somewhere, and it wasn't linked anywhere. If Colin was to go all the way to that site instruction, he can go all the way back to the original instruction. This would be a site instruction to the supplier, asking for an extended scope, requesting a proposal. I can see it's been approved. And again, along with the stories, I can see that the proposal, I can go back to the proposal, make sure that what their proposal includes is exactly what they are requesting in their application for payment. The financial amounts are lining up. I should have my reviews in place. These reviews will show me that the proper team looked at this proposal early on before even the change order. I can see everything was in place for that. So now I can go back to my application for payment, and now I've got the history. Now I'm up to speed. I know what this is claiming, and I can see that it's already started a review process. So if I go and already look at my workflow, I can see how's the review going. So my project team, again, in a perfect world, they'd already done their work. They've gotten notifications from the system saying you have a review sent to you. This email notification would say, please go conduct the review. They're going to come to this application for payment. They're going to look at all the details the same way that Colin did, and they can actually put in their approval or acceptance as they see fit. As the contract manager now, I'm now ready to close out this review and finish out the workflow. Confirming to complete the review. My outstanding review is now 0. This application would be ready for agreement. I agree to this, the supplier has their very own portal still hosted inside the cloud. And as I update this, they will see that it is ready for payment. The different options that you would have with an application for payment is you would actually have just the approval attached with an invoice. Some companies in different industries will also attach a payment certificate, just depending on their internal processes. So along with this, I would say, please proceed with your invoice to finance. Now, along with this, when the invoice is sent to that ERP system, they'll see this AFP has already gotten all of its approvals. They can actually see the link inside of AVEVA's contract risk management if they need to. And they're going to go ahead and say, yes, you've got all the proper project approvals in here. This invoice is not a surprise. I know exactly where to get it paid and approved from. This will eliminate late invoices and make both sides of the parties happy. So again, you should have your entire chain workflow and process in place. Another thing that I would like to show is how do the analytics really help you? So everything that we've just done is really the data that's working inside of your contract. Think about your contracting professionals. Everything they've been doing up to now has usually been tracked in either some type of spreadsheet or again, by disconnected tools. They haven't had a way to actually show their work to them. That's where the analytics can come in. Our widget dashboards are based upon all types of different areas. Some of them, to be clear, is like our financial health. If you think about our financial health, this is a contract change kind of financial bar graph. If you compare it to, say, your financial system of record, an ERP, which is really about Oracle is our most common. What they'll be able to report to you would be an initial contract award value or a purchase order. Only thing else they would be able to report to you would be change orders. So anything that has been properly approved. Now, if I compare this gold bar to, say, your budget or your not to exceed limit, that little bar right there is well above. In a financial record, this contract would look like it's in perfect health. We have plenty of gap between the gold and that black bar. What an ERP can't show you is anything that's in your pipeline. This would be anything that's a potential change. Keep in mind, a potential change could be an internal flagged risk, something that the company has just recognized on the project, just something to keep an eye on. It could be a claim that's awaiting a review. It can even be a scope change. Not quite change orders yet. It is absolutely the responsibility of your contracting team to be aware of them. Now, as you can see, should these potentials turn into changes, we've gone through our budget value. Now, this is a contract that would be in a risk area. That's something that we would need to mitigate and evaluate that risk. Along with changes, I need to know origin. This has always been a request on every project I've been on. When we have so many change orders, because you can't get around them, we always want to know where did they originate from. So something like this pie chart right here would show me, based on all of my change orders, where did that origination come from? Just like that inside instruction, I want to know who initiated it. Was it a client, the internal company, or even raised from the suppliers? Depending on if your suppliers are initiating that change, that could be an internal process you need to look at to say, are we not explaining scope well enough? Some of our widgets can show around our communications. Just like I said, our communication templates are very intelligent. They record all of that history and data behind them. If these communications are related to change, I would want to know, are we responding to them in a timely manner? The widgets are intelligent. So again, as you can see, my cursor is changing. I can actually click into these widgets and I can see those 12 variation requests that is actually being reported. I can continue drilling down, looking at all of this data again, so you can keep on going, looking through the history and getting the information that you need to about, okay, why is it taking so long for these communications to get a response? Some of the other areas that I can show you analytics in would be around reviews. This is an excellent place to start seeing your internal processes. See if your company is having any bottlenecks. So again, I hear this quite a bit that we're chasing people to answer my reviews or approvals. We can actually show you a number of count of how many are active. We can actually split that number into the type of communication there is. I can show you a historical trend. How are we doing over their own internal KPIs or performance measurements? You can see the bottlenecks about who are they sitting with. And again, not to point fingers, but to ask, are you not getting the correct information? Is there anything we can do to help you get that answered? In the bottom, I'm showing obligations. Again, your obligations are your deliverables, contract milestones, anything, even a report that is due from a supplier. Again, showing you a count, there's 25 total. Out of this 25, my supplier is responsible for 15 of those, and my company is responsible for 10. I can drill into this data again, or I could set up a table like this one to the right where it actually would give me my obligations. These obligations are by title, status, and even the due date. So again, if I want to see this on my dashboard, I could see it at a glance and then evaluate that information as I need to. Mounir, if there's nothing else, I'd like to pass it back to you.
Thank you very much, Melanie. Really appreciate it, and I hope it was able to demonstrate to the audience exactly what, how we would do it. And if I was just to take it that little bit further and use another example, right, especially around the commercial risks, because as we said, our focus is around that commercial relationship between the different parties that are involved. And again, re-stressing the point that Thiebaut made earlier about the fact that IT systems and financial systems, document management systems are not the right solutions to manage contracts on capital projects. And it's irrespective of whether we are the client or we are the main contractor managing the suppliers and the subcontractors that we have to go through. And one example I'd like to use, and this is from a real life project that used our solution, and it was a $5.6 billion project. Now, it could be $5 million project. The risk emphasis is very relative depending on the company. This just happened to be a very large offshore oil and gas project. But on that specific project, they had 26 contracts. 4 of those contracts were major contracts, i.e. contracts over $1 billion. And one of those contracts was worth $1.8 billion. Now, again, going back to Thiebaut's examples, Melanie's demo, and about the process of managing the financials and the commitment and the implications. Just on that one contract in the ERP system, SAP in that case, they only had 12 financial milestones recorded, right? 12. Seems very simple, very easy, very straightforward. However, on that project for that one contract, how many contract communications, obligations, events do you reckon that our system managed, right, to help execute that contract? Thiebaut talked about a couple of thousand, 2,000-3,000, I think, at the beginning. What just on that one contract, there were over 27,000 contract communications. Just imagine 27,000 contract communications and events and tasks related just to one contract. And if we were just relying on the financial system, we would find 12 financial milestones, and everything else is sitting in people's outlooks, records in Excel spreadsheets, not having that right correspondence, not having that being proactive when managing the obligations, not having the right alerts automated and automatically being raised without us having to worry about them, not having the right calendar of events. So having that transparency and visibility for the whole team to know what's happening. And if we're managing all this information properly, also the claims. If, you're all way more experienced than I am on capital projects, and we all know claims start happening at the end of the project. End of the project, most of the team is gone. End of the project, they've gone with their Excel spreadsheets to start using it as a template on another project. End of the project, we don't know where the connected information is. So we're in a much worse position, either to negotiate the claim or to rebut the claim, right? So we need to ensure that we have that right information. And one example I was given by a project, and in fact, it was in Paris when I used to live in Paris, from the prime contractor. The prime contractor said to me, please make sure the client understands that the contract says if we send a travel approval form or a personnel approval form to them, and we don't receive approval within or rejection within 5 working days, contract says we can take it as approved, right? If they send it in an email, it just sits in an email. If it's addressed to Melanie, Melanie's on a business trip or Melanie's on holiday, nobody else is copied. Day 6, they say, okay, it's been approved, we proceed. But if they sent it through the system, as Melanie was showing us before, then the system will automatically raise it as a contract obligation. It will raise the necessary alerts and warnings. It will put it in the contract calendar. So again, the whole team has visibility. But what it will also do for you is it will provide Melanie with the opportunity of delegating her authority. So if Melanie delegates her authority, for example, to me, that notification will come to me. So we will avoid missing out on these communications, and we'll start creating a better commercial relationship with the different parties, because we have a single referential point, right? And we have the system as a very project centric. So we're focusing on the project. The data and the information is managed and owned by whoever is investing in the system. So it might be the prime contractor or it might be the client that provides it. We've had some customers look at it as an insurance system where it's reducing the volume of untraceable communications. Again, because as Melanie showed us, it's all mapped and linked directly. And we take the best practice processes. So we can take the organization best practice processes, and we can also take with it the processes that have been defined in the contract itself to enable us to deliver all the contract data, because it is, again, going back to Thiebaut's example, it is contract data. It's not just about text. It's not just about copies of invoices. We need that data. Today, we have the tools to enable us to do this. The tools, as Melanie was showing us with the widget dashboards, to provide that management information. Today, we can also not only do the provide the dashboards and the analytics within the system, we can plug in other systems. So again, going back to the integrated tools and platform Thiebaut was talking about, because the solution has been designed to enable that integration with other systems. For us, we're system agnostic. We've had customers who've used third parties to do the integrations for them. We've had customers where their own IT department has been able to use the system and integrate it with other systems. So in summary, with regards to the solution we provide, we don't only provide the technology and the solution, but we also provide the consultancy that comes with it, similar to what Oricis does, or jointly with Oricis. And this is just from one capital project which we implemented last year, and the feedback we received from them, because we sat down with them, we provided them with a template configuration, and we refined that template configuration to meet their specific needs for that project, which happened to be in Africa, and therefore they had very strict and specific requirements that have to be met, plus all the admin procedures that they have in the contract. So the 5 key benefits, if we want to summarize from the presentation, is standardizing your contract. And we didn't really talk too much today about tender management, but also you can standardize and automate your tender management through the solution. Having a disciplined communications and processes, because everything is predefined within the templates. All the rules are provided. You're not relying on individuals to remember to do something. right? You're not relying on individuals to say, well, I need to update my Excel spreadsheet today to have the information for the next meeting. And when it comes to obligations and deliverables, being proactive. So taking the original obligations in the contract, systemizing them, but also from your communications, from your processes, getting the system to automatically identify what is an obligation and what needs to be managed because it has a contractual implication. And therefore, that starts creating the transparency internally, but also with the other party, right? It's all ensuring that there is that clarity and transparency and the enhanced governance, and ultimately try to prevent the claims. Because if we have a proper process managing the contract and delivering that process to everyone and creating that visibility, we will start preventing claims. And if there are claims, to protect against them. Have no surprises. Have that single source of truth, have that visibility. And just some example of the customers that have been using our solution over the last 20 years and currently. So we've had customers in oil and gas, in mining, in nuclear. We've got from the owner operator side to the EPC contractors, right? From SNC-Lavalin, Worley, who Melanie used to work with, Wood. And it's definitely is not to do with the fact that it must be a large organization. Trans-Adriatic Pipeline, yes, it was a huge project to start off with, but they're actually using it during the operational phase. And their focus in that instance is purely on managing all the tendering activities that still have to take place during the operational phase of that project. So it meets the full contract management requirements from A to Z and everything in between, all the different complexities you may have, irrespective of whether it's a very complex capital project, medium complex, or a straightforward and simple capital project. It can be adapted and designed in such a way to help you. Thank you very much. I think we're just right on time to open it up for questions. So yes. Thiebaut, maybe if I hand back to you.
Well, I'm back to the attendees. Does anyone have any question?
Okay. Yes, that is correct, Geoffrey. We definitely focus on the buy side of contract management, and that's why when we're working with the EPC contractors, their main focus will be on managing their suppliers and subcontractors. When we're working with the owner operators and the clients, they're focusing on managing their prime contractors. So it's always about managing down and reporting up.
You can open up your mic if you want to ask a question directly.
Yeah, please do.
No questions?
I guess we were very clear.
Maybe I have some.
Silence shows complete understanding.
If nobody has any question, I'll be asking one. What is the standard time to implement such a solution in a standard organization? I mean, not a French one, a standard one.
Is there a standard organization other than just a French one? I think the complexities ultimately are the same across the world. Melanie's way more experienced than I am because one, she's been the client, so she's been the receiving end of having such systems implemented, and when working with us of implementing such systems. Melanie, do you want to take that one?
I'd love to. So being with AVEVA for 4 years now, I've actually started out doing the implementations. So the great part about the contract risk management solution is it comes pre-designed with the industry's best practices already in place. You could actually use it out of the box, starting within a couple of weeks. But typically what most organizations like to do is review the blueprint, which would be the specification, and actually put their best practices on top. The standard implementation time would be approximately 2 to 3 months, and that is including the training of a standard project team would be about 25 people, and then getting them to go live. So again, a very quick implementation compared to some of the other solutions I've been on with my past companies.
Okay. How long would be the training for the people using the?
We've got 4 training classes. So the first training classes would be your super user, your high-end user. They do a full system pre-award and post-award, and that's a full week of 5 days of training. Then we would have our end users, which would be people that are in the system occasionally, not every day necessarily. And that is a 1 to 2 day training class, depending on how much responsibility they have. Then we have that reviewer approver role. Those are my technical teams, my managers, who needs to see communications to review them. They take half a day training to see the system, the reports, and how to actually go through the process of approving. And then we have the supplier portal training. So we can conduct supplier training online, and it takes an hour because, again, the system is very light for them to come in, communicate, and then get back to work as they need to. So those are the 4 training classes we provide.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from Delphine.
Yep, I saw.
What's the cost of that contract management system? Does it exist in simpler form so as to become affordable for small companies?
Yeah, Delphine, thank you for your question. The system is one system, right? So we don't have it as separate modules, or we don't have a light version of the system. However, having said that, that doesn't mean that it's only cost effective for large companies. The cost structure when it comes to the system, the way we do that is we focus on the CapEx investment on the projects if you're doing it as a project-based implementation. And we would work with you. So, you know, if the CapEx project is, let's say, up to 10 million, the cost would be X. If the project CapEx investment is, let's say, 1 billion, then it'll be 100X possibly, because what we focus on delivering is the value for you. And whilst the risk might seem to be different, but it's all relative. So the risk and the impact on a smaller project will be, you know, the implication will be as bad as it would be on a large project. So the cost is very relative in terms of the investment you'll be making. So the system, and the reason why I picked Trans-Adriatic Pipeline as an example when I'm speaking of the customers, it's a very small implementation. They only have 14 users using the system. They don't have hundreds of users using the system. They only use one part of the system, which is just for the tendering. So all the contract management part for post-award, because they're during the operational phase, they felt they only need to use it as a register. They don't need to use that part. We don't disable it, and we don't charge them anything extra. We base it all to be relative.
A sub-question would be for me, what is the smallest project it's being used on?
I would say currently, probably that Trans-Adriatic Pipeline, the smallest project. The biggest project, we've got projects that have thousands of users, and they're using projects all across the world. But that is probably, actually, no, sorry, I'm wrong. There is an even smaller project in Northern Ireland. One of the first customers we ever had, because the solution was originally developed in Northern Ireland, where they have 2 users, and they've been using it for almost 20 years. That is actually the smallest one, Thiebaut.
Okay. Anything? Yes.
Fatiha, what are the major difficulties facing the companies by implementing your tool, or what are the main points of attention to care about? Melanie?
So again, with my own experience, with every customer I've had since I've been with AVEVA, the most major difficulties I've come into with every customer is a change process, because change is inevitable. You cannot avoid change on a project, and change processes can be very hard to follow from your corporate project team to the site to your suppliers. Is everybody on the right path? So again, nailing down that process, again, seeing where the origin is coming from and what is the path that we wanted to take. And this is by our best practices. Putting that into the configuration of this tool will make sure that those communication templates are following and tracking the history along the way. So the change process, just by getting a handle on that, has been a huge time saving, cost savings to a lot of the customers I've worked with so far. Being able to see those changes in those financial health analytics, that gives them further pipeline insight, and they're showing accurate live data. So I would say change is my most common request for every customer, but again, full audit history. So auditing is always a huge deal to me because I was always the last person on a project, and I would always need to have a complete history file of everything, or else audit would, come after me. So having that full visibility and transparency on the contract is.
And if I can also add, sorry, Melanie.
Go ahead.
Probably I couldn't hear. If I can also add, Fatiha, one other point as well is during the implementation itself, is having the decision makers, the right people involved in that process will make an incredible amount of difference to the speed of the implementation and to the correctness of the implementation. One example I sometimes use, and this is coming from one of our biggest customers, when they'd been using the solution for the post-award part for many years, and then there was a project that wanted to use it for the pre-award part. The contract manager on that project said to our team when they visited their offices to start working with them, he said, look, I will block one day and I will spend it with you and I will do nothing else. And he blocked one day and he spent it with them. They went through the configuration, went through what refinements he could see and felt were needed. The second day, they went off and started setting it up in the system. Third day, he gave them 2 hours. They took him through a walkthrough, gave his feedback. They refined it, and that became the organization's blueprint configuration. So again, during the implementation, it's very important to have the right people and people with the right authority to make decisions on what's needed. Yes.
Before implementing any tool, it's not only for contract management, but it's for any tool. Be sure that the people you want them to use will be using it.
Yes.
And it means that you've identified the need for the tool. You've got to create in your team a demand for that tool. Because if they don't think they need it, you might think whatever you want, they'll say, whoa, that's your thing, not mine. And they'll say, well, it's too much work. I don't have time for training. I don't have time for the configuration. So you've got to prepare it very thoroughly and prepare the field and be very convincing about that. Not just say, okay, we put a tool. Mm-hmm. And the tool has got to be adapted to the organization. Maybe it can move it, but not it's not the tool that would make the organization. The organization has got to be ready for the tool.
Correct. And Geoffrey, you're right. Change management from day one. Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. Well, we have addressed the costs, organization, training, and implementation. I don't know, Sébastien, do we have something else to add?
Non, il reste quelques minutes encore, éventuellement, si tu veux poser d'autres, toi-même des questions, mais les gens commencent à partir.
Yes, Vincent, we can say it. Implementing a tool is a project. It's got to be under project management. Yes. You've got to have contract management with your tool provider and with every consulting thing that you've been using for that.
Yeah, and you would need a project manager from both sides. So you would, from your side as well as you're implementing it, as you know, Thiebaut was right. Implementing a solution, but if nobody's going to use it, that's a wasted investment. So yes, project managers, but also change, as Geoffrey said, change management. So you need to have that change management plan and clearly communicate it to the teams that you're going to have.
I will add something that I've been thinking about for some time. I've read the stats, and the stats say, it's not me, that's a Project Management Institute, and the stats are not old, they're from 2018, that 70% of the projects that are run in companies fail. 70%. When we look at IT or information system projects, the number rise to 80 or 85%. And what so? Because of the change management. They think that because they're providing a tool, there's no need for change. That's all the contrary. The more tools you will be using, the more new tools, the more change management you need. And you've got to use a lot of words to convince people. I've been
absolutely.
And sorry.
No. Sorry, je m'excuse, Thiebaut.
It was just a small story. I was working as a consultant in a bank, and they had PeopleSoft working on. And I was looking at the people using PeopleSoft, and at the other side of their desk, they had the Bristol sheet. They were writing things on the Bristol sheet, and they say, I have no confidence in this tool. I have my Bristol sheet. This I have confidence in.
I find the same thing with Excel.
Exactly, and when I first started work, and this is, I mean, it's going to show my age. I started working in a construction company, but in the finance department, and we had the IBM System 36, you know, the dumb terminals, and every day, at the end of the day, the chief financial officer would make me write in the old accounting ledgers everything that was entered on in the computer. So at the end of the day, he said to me, I don't trust them. It's going to fail, and I want to have access to my information. Fortunately, we're well beyond those days today, right? Technology is here to help us, and technology should enable us to work better. There's so much more being expected from us today on capital projects. The complexity is greater, not just of the projects themselves, but the commercial setup of the project, from all the different stakeholders that are being, you know, participating, on the project. And we need to be prepared, and we need to have that, you know, line of sight of what is about to happen, right? Avoid surprises.
Okay. Well, I think maybe it's time for a wrap up. Thank you, Mounir. Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you, Thiebaut.
Thank you to all you people being there today. Don't forget, if you want to apply, look up for the dates, opening on May 17th, and we'd be glad to talk to you about your application with Sébastien and other people. Thank you.
Merci Thiebaut, merci Mounir, merci Melanie.
Merci à tous, and looking forward for follow-ups. Take care.
Bye, everybody.